Hello, everybody. Let's begin this meeting this evening and have a moment of silence and reflection, especially keeping in mind Mel Amos, the widow of former Mayor Ken Amos, passed away today about 1 o'clock. So keep her and the family in your thoughts and prayers. And we'll just have a moment of, personal reflection here. Thank you very much. We'll officially call this a regular meeting of the Town of Holden Beach to order. Say welcome to all of you and glad you're here. I made a comment a moment ago. I believe we've got more cars than we do people. I hope we don't get rushed here in a minute with a mob. But anyway, let's stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Am I right? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Number 4 on our agenda. Do we have anybody that's not been here before? Everybody knows the ropes about picking up the papers in the back and all that, right? All right, so let's consider the approval of the agenda, item number 4 on the agenda. Is there a motion to approve as presented?
I make the motion to approve.
I second.
Motion second, discussion, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
We have a unanimous approval. And number 5, approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of March 8th, pages 1 through 6 in your packet. Is there a motion to approve those?
I move that we approve it.
Motion is second.
Second.
Discussion, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Those stand approved. And 5B, minutes of the special meeting for March 11th, pages 7 through 9 in your package. Is there a motion?
I motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Also is unanimous. And now number 6, public comments on agenda items. Agenda items only at this point in time, and then later on in the meeting, we'll have an opportunity for you to address other items. But right now, agenda items, and you commissioners will have to help me with this, because I understand we're operating a little differently now. We've got 3 names that have signed up: John McIntyre, Rich Weingard, and Jay Holden. I don't know if I'm in charge of this or you
You're
are,
in charge,
John.
but the first 2 are about agenda items.
I'm in charge. You just gonna tell them to shut up when it's time to shut up?
No, sir, I'm gonna give
She's
that.
got a 3-minute,
Who does that?
Heather.
Clerk? I gotta get acclimated here to these new procedures. All right. Where's Kite Man? There he is. Not an agenda item, okay. Rich Weingard? Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good evening. Prior to tonight, I've never come to a Board of Commissioners meeting with the intent to speak, but on a few occasions, I've heard comments made that I felt it was important that an opposing viewpoint be expressed. Now, I understand you can accept rules that limit the time of a speaker and rules that restrict comment to agenda items, but it does me no good to speak at the end of the meeting under the general comments if it's a topic that's being voted on at this meeting. So to say I have to pre-sign up on something I don't even intend to speak on, but I hear a comment made in the public comment section, I think you risk suppressing opposing viewpoints by religiously adhering to that you gotta sign up in advance. So, my comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jay Holden, I believe your issue is not an agenda item, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so you have an opportunity later on. So, Mr. Secretary, I believe we've completed the public comments agenda items, is that right?
Sir.
Chief Wally Lane, please report. I had to do a double take with the chief. today. He's all slicked up.
Yeah.
That other guy got arrested somewhere, down there, I guess.
He did what he had to do. Good evening, everyone. Well, I'm sure everyone, especially those that live west of the pier, have noticed that the speed limit has yet again changed and will remain that way through the tourist season. Happens every year about this time. I think it was a little early this year, but nonetheless, 35 is 35, and forewarned is hopefully blessed that everything will work out in that regard. We have now transitioned from house break-in to vehicle break-in. That's an annual event also. And I use the term break-ins concerning vehicles loosely because they never are really break-ins. The druggies aren't wandering around on the island breaking car windows, going through vehicles and that sort of thing. Typically what they do is they wander aimlessly and they find the car that's unlocked, and then they rummage through the car for anything that might be of value. Should that be some change that you might have in the car, GPS, camera, a gun, as we had a couple of guns taken last summer. Those are the types of things that they're looking for, but they're only looking in unlocked vehicles. Unfortunately, tourists are more often the victim of this particular crime than the folk that live here, because I preach this same sermon every year. Don't leave valuables in your car, and make sure your car is locked. Right? Holden Beach is a fairly safe place to be, but we don't have a guard at the gate. And anybody with a drug problem on the mainland can certainly find their way to the island and go shopping in the middle of the night if they feel so inclined to do so. And this past weekend, somebody felt so inclined to do so, and we had 2 or 3 car break-ins this past weekend. It's actually started a little earlier this year than normal. Usually it doesn't start until the main influx of tourists are here on the island. This year it started a little early. If you live next to a rental house and you're a full-time resident, share with the renters that might be in your airspace the fact that the island is a safe place to be. However, don't create a crime of opportunity. Make sure you don't leave valuables in your car, and make sure you lock your car, and give us all a break in that regard. And most of you, I'm sure all of you know, that Days at the Docks is coming this weekend. The weather's a little iffy for Saturday, but supposed to be better on Sunday. Just keep that in mind as you're traveling around this weekend, that there are going to be extra folk here. The bridge only closes for a few minutes on Sunday to allow the bopples to make their way to the waterway, so the lucky winner can partake of the cash at the end of the rainbow, I suppose. But otherwise, it shouldn't be a huge problem for the folk that live here. Otherwise, the police department is just preparing for the coming budget, tourist and hurricane seasons. Looking forward to all of them, I promise. And I hope you guys are preparing for the hurricane season as well. Be glad to answer any questions.
Commissioners, do you have any questions?
Well, I have one. Have we developed any mechanism to get the word to the rental agencies? We can't, I don't know how we get to the owners who come on the weekends themselves, but to the rentals to highlight it somehow to these people to lock their cars and.
That's an annual thing as well. And we typically visit all the rental companies and give our little spiel, and what they do with it is what they do with it. We can't force them to do anything. And the town advertises it, on the website, and I mean, we use all the media applications we have available to us to get the word out. But typically, and it's not the rental company's fault, but these folks rent a house for a week, they've saved up all year to come down for that week, and the only thing they're interested is being at the beach for that week and having a good time. And yes, they get packets with information galore when they check into that house. And then when they get to the house, those packets go wherever it is they go. But I can assure you, probably not one page of anything they're handed, other than maybe the receipt for the rental, is ever even looked at.
So
Don't know how you force folk to do that, but,
Would a fridge magnet be an option?
well, we've got fridge magnets for rip currents.
With
Fridge
that- and
magnets
that's-
are, fridge magnets are always an option, but there again, somebody gotta take the time to stand there in front of the fridge when they're going for that beer and read the magnet. And I mean, we can do it, that's not a problem, and they're relatively inexpensive. And if that's something the board would be interested in, I'm sure we can facilitate that. But there again, can't make them read it. I mean, I'm not opposed at all.
Well, I'd
in
look at
fact,
my-
I've probably got some funds that would help purchase those magnets. If-
We rented our house for 4 years before we moved here, and ours now have been on the fridge, both the Turtle Patrol red one and the Riptide, for 7 years now. And I'll have to tell you that when I came to visit, every time I looked at it, and I checked the rules again on Riptide and what was likely, and the Turtle Patrol, I have a feeling that we'd improve the likelihood if you had something that is distinctive, that told them, lock your car and don't leave valuables in, it may be stolen. You know, that would get my attention.
Well, I mean, we can certainly do that. Heather? Help remind me of that, and let's get together, and I've got funds in my budget that would cover some magnets, so.
Because
we'll
these
take care
renters
of
don't
that.
come to this meeting and they never hear this line, you know?
Yeah, we'll take care of that. Yep, hopefully it'll help. Couldn't hurt. Anything else?
All right, thank you very much, Chief. Number 8 on the agenda, discussion and possible approval of Resolution 1605. Mr. Hewitt, you gonna speak to that, or have we,
I believe the clerk is gonna cover this.
clerk's
I
gonna
believe the
take care of
clerk's
this
gonna
one?
get this one.
All right, Madam Clerk, the floor is yours.
Okay, if adopted, Resolution 1605 updates Rule 28B of the Board Rules of Procedure to reflect the new meeting date of the third Tuesday of each month, and then it just extends the time for public comment period, 6:55, to reflect our start time of 7 PM. That's it.
All right, is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Okay, is there a second?
Second?
And discussion?
I have a question. The comment period after the initial comment period, the one after the meeting is almost over, does everybody have to sign up for that one? Because that's the way it was in the previous version, that you had to sign up for it. It said everybody, it said all speakers had to sign up, it didn't say which ones. So my question is, does everybody have to sign up for that?
The only thing I changed, I copied and pasted, it's just the time and the date. So the way I read it, yes, everybody has to sign up for both.
Okay, as pointed out by some of the members of the audience the last time, they don't really know that they're gonna wanna talk to something until after we have our discussions and possibly vote on something.
That's fair.
So
But we
them
also-
having to sign up prior to even knowing if they wanna talk kind of defeats the purpose.
But we have the right as the board to approve any extension as well as existence of a comment. And I would agree that if somebody came and had that, I would have no hesitation to say, of course it's gonna be allowed.
So what you're saying is we pass the rule, but we're not gonna follow it. What I'm saying is if we're gonna pass the rule, let's follow it. If we're not gonna follow it, let's make it something we can follow. It just makes sense.
Yeah, I have no problem, that's a good, I agree with that point. The beginning makes sense, agenda item, you know what's on the agenda, everyone should know what's on the agenda. 3 minutes is reasonable, 30 minutes is reasonable, but if it's open, it should be open at the end, and I have no problem in making that change to, you don't have to sign up beforehand. I would like to know, though, I would like to folks to sign up when they go to the microphone, so we know who spoke, and, because I usually make notes of who spoke on what agenda, or, you know, what the topic, but I would agree with making that change, just for the after the second
The general.
general comments, not,
Heather, can we write that change now, or do we need to defer the action on this till next
I
month?
would prefer you defer it, so I
Okay.
could just go through the whole resolution and not miss anything.
Okay,
Okay.
I'd recommend we do that.
okay.
Do I need a motion to that, or just ask the board consensus?
Yeah, a motion to defer, I'll withdraw my motion to approve.
Say it again.
He withdraws
I
his motion.
originally
Made a motion
approved,
to
but I
approve.
make a motion to defer the approval of this resolution.
Defer
You wanna
till-
make a substitute,
Yes.
I second that.
okay. But are we still open for discussion on the,
Open for
Sure.
discussion, but
Okay. Just wanna make sure.
we would adopt Ken's suggestion,
okay,
and that will be ready by next time, so that we make one vote on it.
okay. So we're still open for comments.
Right?
Can I speak to that now?
Yes, sir.
Sure.
All right, on number 2, page 12, I'm a little confused about the mayor and public officials. So if we want to say anything about the subjects that are on the agenda, we have to say it, we have to sign up and say it before we get to the point on the agenda where it's listed?
Oh, these are for speakers that you would invite from outside?
The mayor or other public officials.
No, but read the sentence before that. There's a comma.
Who are invited,
The speakers. Okay, I got you. All right, my mistake. Number 3, following that paragraph. Whenever we have a major, I guess, number 3 is what you're talking about, doing away with, or?
no, that's
Or
30,
amending?
no, no,
Nope.
So the point Ken made is gonna still be there, but you just keep extending the time if you want to.
we can extend the time.
No, the point Ken made was sign up for the general comments at the end. Since something, that was a reasonable, I think, if something comes up during the meeting, you don't know that you have, you don't know if you have a desire to make a general comment at the end, and therefore the sign up before 7 o'clock doesn't make sense. So it's, what I was referring to is just the sign up.
We would, and we will amend paragraph 2.
But the public comment period, number 3, I guess I'm just slow tonight, but I'm still confused on public comment period. Is it 30 minutes plus 15, 45 max, or do you have the ability to extend?
We have the ability, the board.
We always have
yeah.
the ability
Yeah.
to extend, right? We always have the ability to vote and change that, but it is a total of 30 minutes.
Because as a part of number 3, it does specifically say additional time may be allotted by a motion and majority vote.
Right.
Can I ask one question if I'm gonna be rewriting this? For the general public comments at the end, is that gonna be included in the 30-minute time limit now, or is it gonna be no time period at the end? When I rewrite it, do I need to include something that says something that it includes both? I'm gonna have to separate the public comment periods now. Right now, it's not separated, so is the 30 minutes gonna include both, or just the first one, when I rewrite it?
Ken, you have a, my view was that we would keep it 30, we would set it as 30 minutes, but we're at liberty to extend it if we have valid comments and we need more time.
Okay,
But if it was gonna be 2 hours, we would delay some people till the next meeting.
okay.
We wouldn't make the whole public wait all night long unless somebody,
Makes sense.
So as I understand, if we have, say, 12 people sign up, 1 or 2 people start talking too long and they eat up to 30 minutes, and we have somebody that's been waiting in line, and they were number 10 or 12 to sign up, no matter what they have to say or how important it is, they just get postponed.
but the board can approve extension. I mean, it's,
Yeah, but you understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
About if you got somebody that's here just fussing for the sake of fussing, and they're not making sense, it's not good for the discussion, and they use the time up, 2, 3, or 4 people, and then you've got somebody here with experience, knowledge, and information we should hear. How do you know whether that's gonna be the 8th person or the 12th person, even though they've been here in line? But
Mr. Mayor,
anyway, yes,
my
ma'am.
suggestion would be that you allocate a time frame for each speaker to speak and then cap. So a speaker would be able to speak for a period of 5 minutes. That's customary in most public meeting settings where you allow a speaker to speak for a 5-minute period of time, rather than putting the cap on the total amount of time that all of the people have to speak.
Well, we have a cap now of 3 minutes, and that's, you know, looking at other municipalities around here, it's 3 minutes. So we felt comfortable with 3 minutes.
So on agenda items, depending upon what the agenda item was, you might not want to cap the entire amount of time. I mean, depending upon what the board was determining, you may want significant amounts of public feedback. So I understand that.
but and we have the right to do that.
But you're now suggesting dividing the period of time that the public has to comment on agenda items, and they're supposed to sign up for that in advance before 6:55. And then at the end of the meeting, we are changing the rules so that the board can allow anybody to speak for what amount of time, I think is the question.
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
3 minutes, so if 50 people are in attendance and want to speak about non-agenda items, they can each speak for 3 minutes.
Unless we run out of time. Reasonableness, we're not gonna run 4 hours of discussion.
Right.
I think the clerk just needs feedback from the board as to
Right.
if you are capping the second period of time as well.
I would just like to remind ourselves, as I look around the room, there's some people that were here a few administrations ago, whenever they implemented basically what you are implementing tonight. And just a reminder that the attendance of the meetings went down and people angrily left whenever they didn't feel like they had an opportunity to express themselves. So I would just say, if you want to do this, you guys are the commissioners, but be prepared. You know, there's going to be some tough meetings whenever hot issues come up and people want to speak. And in the past at Holden Beach, I mean, I go to a lot of meetings and I know what you're saying is true. But whenever you don't let people speak, they've gone to the trouble to come and be prepared to speak. It's a brewing formula for problems.
I think this board wouldn't cut off if we have good discussion, valid discussion.
Man, and
Well, but I kind of think that that very reason, Alan, is why some of this we needed, because we've had people stand up before and speak for 30 minutes. And then that didn't allow other people who did have comments to get up. So by limiting the time that someone can stand up and speak, we allow more people the opportunity
Yeah.
to express their opinion.
well, and
But
just,
about this, the whole time, I see what you mean.
we all of us know why this is being implemented, you know. The visitor that I asked to come here and straighten this out on the way we operate talked too long. But at the same time too, had he not done that, we'd have kept digging our hole deeper. And, you know, that's what it's all about. And, I mean, that's fine. We'll do whatever you guys say. I'm not gonna say anymore because I've been reminded I can't debate. You ready to vote?
Well, the vote,
We're,
the vote is to defer.
postpone.
Good to deferred action.
All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. It's 4-0, Madam Clerk, to put this off to the next meeting. And needless to say, that automatically puts it on the agenda, right?
Yes.
Yes, I hope.
Number 9, discussion and possible approval of the resolution 1606, adopting the Southeastern North Carolina Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan. Mr. Evans, our building inspector. The floor is yours, sir.
All right. Sometime in the past, roughly 15 months ago, we were tasked by the North Carolina Department of Public Safety to enter into a multi-regional hazard mitigation plan, and there was a reason for that, and I'll get to it. And the board voted to allow the planning staff to undertake that measure. Prior to that, we were coming to the end of our hazard mitigation plan, and we opted to join the county and keep our plan autonomous inside the counties for that following year, or until which time we could get this plan finalized. That way we would stay valid for all those things that we need, that we get when we have a plan. Now, my eyes are getting a little weak, so anyway, I've got a reading lesson that's gonna take a little while. If you've got pillows, you can take a nap. Okay. In the early 1990s, there was a new federal policy regarding disaster that began to evolve. Rather than simply reacting whenever disaster strikes, the federal government would encourage communities to first assess their vulnerability to various disasters and then take action to reduce and eliminate potential risks. The logic is simple, that a disaster-resistant community can rebound from a natural disaster with less loss of property or human injury at much lower cost, and consequently more quickly. Moreover, other costs associated with disasters, such as the time lost from productive activity by businesses and industry, are minimized. The Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act embodies the new philosophy, and Section 409 of the Stafford Act sets forth the requirements that communities evaluate natural hazards within their respective jurisdiction and develop an appropriate plan of action to mitigate those hazards. The amended Stafford Act required that the communities identify potential hazards to the health, safety, and well-being of its residents and identify and prioritize actions that can be taken by the community to mitigate those hazards. Before disaster strikes, for communities to remain eligible for hazard mitigation assistance from the federal government, they must prepare a hazard mitigation plan. This plan, the one we have, these plans may be developed at the municipal, county, or regional level. Responsibility for fulfilling the requirements of Section 409 of the Stafford Act and administering the FEMA Hazard Mitigation Plan as outlined in the Code of Federal Regulations in 44 CFR 206-405 has been delegated to the state of North Carolina, specifically to the North Carolina Division of Emergency Management. The Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000 amended the Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act by repealing the previous mitigation planning provision, Section 409, and replacing therewith a new set of mitigation plan requirements, Section 322. The new section emphasizes the need for state, tribal, and local entities to closely coordinate mitigated planning and implementation efforts, which brings us to our regional hazard mitigation plan. So on July 1st, 2008, FEMA issued a revised version of the local multi-hazard mitigation planning guidance. It is at this time, which is the standard utilized for preparation of this plan, among the most significant changes, the planning guidelines reflected in this update are: 1, estimation of the numbers and types of structures that have experienced repetitive flood losses; 2, identification of actions to ensure continued local compliance with the National Flood Insurance Program; and 3, integration of the community rating system or planning initiative with the overall hazard mitigation planning process. And what it did was, it basically says that if you don't have a plan, you don't get to participate in any of these things. So you have to have a plan. Now, North Carolina Emergency Management summarizes hazard mitigation as follows. Hazard mitigation involves the use of specific measures to reduce the impact of hazards on people and the built environment. The measures may include both structural and non-structural techniques, such as protecting buildings and infrastructure from the forces of nature or wise floodplain management practices. Action may be taken to protect both existing and our future developments. It is widely accepted that the most effective mitigation measures are implemented before an event at the local government level, where decisions on the regulation and control of development are ultimately made. A regional hazard mitigation plan is classified by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and any mitigation planning effort involving 2 or more county jurisdictions, and the hazard mitigation plan involves a 3-county region, including Brunswick, New Hanover, and Pender counties. All the municipalities within the 3 counties are also participants. Everybody participating, okay? So I'm just gonna not read all those town names. All right, and with that said, it is imperative that we pass this resolution. All municipalities are gonna be doing this jointly. The last one that gets passed is when the plan is in effect. Well, believe it or not, like all other plans and all other government things, it's run up to the last minute, so it's important that they get passed. Because if all of them don't get passed, then we stand a chance of the plan not being approved at the last phase. And we don't want a storm and no plan, okay? Now, the other thing you need to understand is that we carry autonomy while we're also a member of that regional plan. And that plan's about that thick. If you read it, you'll see that we still carry our autonomy inside of it. It still identifies our critical facilities. It still identifies issues that we have, and it talks specifically to our strategies, what our strategies were and what our mitigations are. And I'll give you an example. There's monies available. We've already been contacted by a firm, but there's monies available for our repetitive loss structures out there. And it's a 90-10 match. Without this plan, we don't qualify. So if someone chooses to tap into those kinds of funds, we qualify with the plan. That's just one little small factor. The other factor is that we know that without this type of plan, I'm not saying we have funds that are available to do such things like what we're talking about with our sewers, but without this plan, we basically dry up the whole well. So we have to have a plan. So with that said, I'm going to go into another reading lesson, and I'm going to read the resolution. And this is for the hazard mitigation plan. It says, whereas this, one more thing before I read this. The plan is actually, I think, don't we have the link on the website for the town website, Heather? Didn't we put the link?
No, I can't. Well, it's in the agenda packet information, so yes. In the agenda packet information, it's in there, but it's not separate from that.
Yeah, can we put it on the website? No, we need to put that link on the town's website, and then you can just click on it and go through it section by section, okay? Now, we don't have to have a public hearing. This has been publicized about 3 different times. We've met over the last 14 months. We've actually met at 5 different locations, 5 different times, and we participated.
I have a question. Did this regional mitigation plan force us to change anything in our plan?
No,
Okay.
all we did was take our plan and add it to that plan, and then if there was anything that was in our plan that didn't meet the requirements, we worked with them and brought it up, is what we did.
Okay.
Yeah. So, the resolution says, whereas the citizens and property within Brunswick County are subject to the effects of natural hazards and man-made hazards, events that pose threats to lives and cause damage to property, and with the knowledge and experience that certain areas in the county are particularly vulnerable to flooding, high winds, drought, heat waves, and severe winter weather, and whereas the county and participating municipal jurisdictions desire to seek ways to mitigate the impact of identified hazard risks, and whereas the legislature of the state of North Carolina has in Part 6, Article 21 of Chapter 143, Parts 3, 5, and 8 of Article 19 of Chapter 160A, and Article 8 of Chapter 168 of the North Carolina General Statute, delegated to local government units the responsibility to adopt regulations designed to promote the public health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens. And whereas the legislature of the state of North Carolina has in Part 6 of Article 1A of Chapter 166A and the North Carolina General Statute stated in item 19.4B2 for a state of emergency declared pursuant to GS 166A-19.20A after the deadline established by the Federal Emergency Management Agency pursuant to the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2002, PL 106-390, the eligible entities shall have a hazard mitigation plan approved pursuant to the Stafford Act, and whereas Section 322 of the Federal Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000 states that local governments must develop all hazard mitigation plans in order to be eligible to receive future hazard mitigation grant program funds and other disaster-related assistance funding, and that said plan must be updated and adopted within a 5-year cycle. And whereas the county and its participating municipal jurisdictions has performed a comprehensive review and evaluated of each section of the previously approved hazard mitigation plan, and have updated the said plan as required under regulations of 44 CFR Part 201, and according to guidance issued by the Federal Emergency Management Agency and the North Carolina Division of Emergency Management. And whereas it is the intent of the County Board of Commissioners to fulfill the obligation in order that the county will be eligible for federal and state assistance in the event that a state of disaster is declared for a hazard event affecting the county, and whereas the town of Holden Beach actively participates in the planning process of the Southeastern North Carolina Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan and has fulfilled all their part of the multi-jurisdictional planning elements required by FEMA. Now therefore be it resolved that the town of Holden Beach Board of Commissioners hereby, 1, adopt the Southeastern North Carolina Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan. 2, separately adopt the section of plan that are specific to the town of Holden Beach, and vest the planning and inspections director with the responsibility, authority, and the means to inform all concerned parties of this action, cooperate with the federal, state, and local agency and private firms which undertake the study, survey, maps, and identify floodplain and flood-related erosion areas, and cooperate with neighboring communities with respect to management of adjoining floodplain and or flood-related erosion areas in order to prevent aggravation of existing hazards. 4, appoint the planning and inspection directors to assure that in cooperation with Brunswick County, the hazard mitigation plan is reviewed annually and every 5 years and specified in the plan to assure that the plan is in compliance with all state and federal regulations, and that any needed revisions or amendments to the plan are developed and presented to the town of Holden Beach Board of Commissioners for consideration. 5, agrees to take such other official actions that may be reasonably necessary to carry out the objectives of the 2016 Southeastern North Carolina Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan. That's it.
So just to follow up, so B, you as a director have been doing everything in B up to this point anyway, right?
Right, well, that's what the previous board had
Right.
guided us to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if we wanted to make any changes like, relating to our sewer vulnerability, to our hazard, any changes at all to our plan, there's no restrictions, we just make the changes and float it up.
If you read the plan, it's already in there. We were working on that, and basically, the way a plan reads, it doesn't talk specifically about what those things we're talking about doing.
Right.
It says you will upgrade it and try to make it as least vulnerable as possible.
Right.
That's the way the plan works.
But
That's the language.
But if we wanted to update that plan with more specifics when we get to the specifics, there's no limitations on us updating our plan because it's part of this.
Well, the way the
Other plan.
plan works is you can update the plan,
Okay,
if that's what you're asking.
Yes.
But the plan is full of strategies and mitigations, and then all those details are what's in between. You're basically declaring that if you've got something like we have, that you're gonna be working on fixing it.
okay.
That's
right,
what you're doing
okay,
in that plan.
Okay. Okay.
I make a motion to pass resolution 16-06.
Second,
I second.
discussion. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. It's unanimous, Madam Clerk.
Thank you for your reading lesson.
Number 10, discussion and possible approval of ordinance 16-09. This is the nuisance ordinance about noise.
Good evening. Mayor, Commissioners, I have worked with staff based on your direction from your last meeting to make revisions based on your direction to your noise ordinance. It's my understanding from the initial feedback that I have received from the commissioners that there may be some items that you would like to discuss tonight and perhaps further revisions need to be made. I'm open to your questions, or I can give sort of a broad brush overview of the ordinance as it exists at this moment.
I have a couple of questions. You know, part of the intent was to make sure that we, you know, we're part of Brunswick County. We want to be consistent with Brunswick County ordinance. That's fairly new. So was this drafted with, to make, was that achieved? This ordinance consistent with the Brunswick County ordinance?
It's not inconsistent with Brunswick County's ordinance. It's more
Okay.
consistent with the needs of this town and the direction that I received from staff and the commissioners that you wanted to keep Holden Beach a family beach and to be able to address noise at different levels as it may arise.
Okay, that's good. There's a couple of specifics. On, I guess it's the third paragraph, you mentioned schools. We don't have any schools.
Okay?
And more specific, a little bit more detailed was the 11 PM on the next page, bottom of the next page, 11 PM and 7 AM.
Yes.
I thought we had approved at 10 PM.
This is a draft ordinance for your
Okay.
review. You can make any
Okay.
direction to change it as you wish. This is consistent with other ordinances in other towns that are of the nature of Holden Beach. But if the commissioner's direction is to change it to 10 PM, then I will revise it to change it to 10 PM.
Yeah, I think we originally had it 10 PM. And the next one is the, on page 20, our page 20, is the complaint of 2 or more persons. Can you elaborate on that?
Let me explain that. That means that it's prima facie evidence. It means that the party that is the subject of the 2 complaints then has the responsibility to rebut that they are the person causing the noise. It's not necessary for 2 people to call the police in order to have someone be investigated for a noise complaint. It just shifts the burden of proof. Additionally, the police officers can, on their own, be driving around the town, observe if they're riding around with their windows down, loud noise coming from residents. They can take opportunity to enforce the noise ordinance at that point. If you live at the end of a cul-de-sac and there's only one house in there, and you're the only person that complained, that certainly you have the ability to complain. That would prompt the police department to have to investigate. If the police officer gets there and he hears it, and that too is prima facie evidence. If there's a complaining party and an investigating officer, that determine it. But it does not require 2 people to complain in order to trigger somebody being in violation of the noise ordinance.
But I guess the circumstance, if in your scenario, the police officer arrives, one person makes a complaint, police officer arrives, and they see the police officer coming down the road and they stop the noise, then what happens?
That's gonna be the problem with almost any noise ordinance is, and one of the reasons why with the draft of this noise ordinance, you've seen more specific language as to what is unreasonable noise, more examples, more things that you can hold somebody, the volume of noise, the intensity of the noise, giving a court direction as to what you have defined as unreasonable noise. You're trying to battle someone that is looking out their front porch and hearing the police come down or seeing the police and turning down the noise. You're never going to be able to address that with a noise meter because you're not going to be able to get them to turn back up the volume in order to measure it. So if someone has called or 2 people have called or a person has called and the police go out there because of a noise disturbance, then the police have the ability to issue a civil citation. It's also a Class 3 misdemeanor to violate a town ordinance. I've had some discussions or a discussion with the police chief and also with the manager about other things that this police department would be prepared to do in the event that you've got someone that the police come and they turn off the music for 45 minutes and then they crank it back up and the police come again, how this police department would address that situation. Certainly, there are criminal charges that are available, and with that would come the ability, if the police department or the officer investigating found it necessary for their investigation to seize personal property, they could do that at that time. Short of criminal charges being levied, it is not my suggestion that ordinance include any language about taking of personal property from someone who has violated the ordinance. With that, if you were to include that language in your ordinance, you would be potentially running afoul of all sorts of search and seizure issues. If it is the item that is causing the noise is located within a residence, is the police officer allowed to go in to obtain that item without having some additional reason to enter the house? There are a lot of things that there are lots of reasons why you would not want to include that as a civil or in your ordinance, but that possibility is available if the police department has to charge somebody with criminal charges as a result of their failure to reduce the noise. And Chief, did you have something you wanted to?
I was just gonna mention the specific section that will operate under in that regard, and that's North Carolina General Statute 14-4, which says, if any person shall violate an ordinance of a county, city, town, metropolitan sewage district created under Article 5, Chapter 162A, he shall be guilty of Class 3 misdemeanor and shall be fined not more than $500. But realistically, what that does is, if we go the first time and we're kinder and gentler, and we either give them a warning and they turn it down and everything goes away and it's all great and wonderful, or we issue a town citation the first time we got it, right? That's kinder and gentler also. Then charges somebody with a Class 3 misdemeanor. If it came to the Class 3 misdemeanor part, we have options. We can write them a state citation for the Class 3 misdemeanor, and they get the citation, and they get a court date, and it plays out that way. And if they really push the envelope, we can cuff them and stuff them and take them to the Crossbar Hotel in Bolivia, where they can post a bond and really get their attention. And they'll still get a court date, and they'll still go through the court system, and ultimately it'll be the court that decides if our ordinance is cool or not cool. It's not up to us, but those are options that we have to enforce it, and we will use all those options as necessary.
The other thing that we added to this ordinance with the hope of getting the attention of not just occupants of rental property, but also property owners, is that if property owners are given proper notice after a violation occurs at their house, after the second violation, that they could be held civilly liable for a fine. And I've discussed this with the town manager and also with some of the commissioners, but there's a huge education component that's necessary if you're changing this ordinance from the existing, the original ordinance, which was perhaps because of the times, perhaps because of buildup on the beach. It wasn't really necessary to do anything other than just tell somebody they're being too loud and it was time for them to turn off their lights. The education component can be done in a number of formats. Obviously, I think something should be placed on the town website, but a pamphlet that goes with the rental companies, making the rental companies aware that they need to advise renters of their property that there is a new noise ordinance that's in effect, that it was necessary because people were not acting in a manner that was indicative of their desire to be at a family beach, and that it will be enforced. Hopefully it will be a very short period of time before the police department is not having to respond to noise complaints.
Yeah, so in response, I agree, Chief. This is the tool, the intent, my intent was to give you a tool, and we trust your discretion. Policing, you know, you don't stop everybody going 36 miles an hour going down the street. It's just like all the other policing that takes place. We trust the discretion of the officers. So, yeah, I just have one other question about the 100 feet away.
Yeah, I
As
got-
you know, we're pretty compact.
Yeah, after the original draft of the ordinance, Town Clerk was kind enough to point out to me that there had been direction by the Board of Commissioners that this should also apply to residential, areas other than residential. It's my intent by including that provision that would be a provision that only applied in an area that was not residential. And the reason why is that, as y'all know better than I do, Holden Beach's zoning map, you do have some commercial businesses that are located in proximity to residences, but they are in the proper zoning district. So that the language in that section would need to be revised after further review, but the intent would for that to only apply in a non-residential. And the thought behind that, but certainly seeking direction from the commissioners, is that if you buy a house in an area where you know that there is a restaurant there, that you might need to tolerate a little bit more noise during certain hours because it is a business that people are enjoying on their vacation.
Yep, okay, thank you.
So you're gonna revise that section?
Yes.
I only have one, a comment on the chief's observations and yours as well. I think when we were campaigning for election, we heard a lot of discussions, and we want to stay a family beach, which would include not running out and giving a lot of tickets and making a lot of people unhappy. So my personal, I don't speak for the board, but my personal approach would be, you give a warning, and if the people are reasonable, they take advantage of that warning, and it's the end of the story. If they're not, then I trust the police are smart enough to then progress up the chain only as necessary, and hopefully they don't have to go far up that chain.
One would hope.
The other one was, from mine, is to make it as easy to enforce and to enforce in a courtroom, was to use more of the term of plainly audible sound rather than getting all the other sophisticated. And I hope the police never have to use the device. If you can do plainly audible, then you don't have to have that device, and you don't have to argue that in court. But if the judge understands, and the definition is pretty clear on plainly audible, and we're using that as our primary criteria for noise violation, I think we might be better off than getting off on other tangents.
Well, and I originally intended to remove the noise meter, but my feedback from discussions was that needed to be included. The plainly audible standard is not a bad standard, but North Carolina case law, recent case law, is using the unreasonably loud noise and the noise disturbance language. There's a 1994 case that spells out pretty precisely what has been approved and what has been overturned. I can certainly go back and look and see if we can improve it by adding the plainly audible, but I think that you're covered in terms of enforceability within the courts based on the unreasonable noise.
That was gonna be one of my questions, was the 50 and 60 dB, they're in here for measured noise levels. Are those something that we think that we'll be able to go to court and defend and not waste our money trying to defend it? Or are we gonna go to court, try to defend it and lose and waste our money?
Well, now you're asking me to be a judge.
No, I'm asking, you just said this was all spelled out pretty much in a lawsuit
Yeah.
that already took place. I'm asking for what was that, results?
So, opportunities to challenge, I think, is what I would tell you for the noise decibel meter. Opportunities to challenge are similar to opportunities to challenge roadside devices used to measure blood alcohol content. Is it calibrated it correctly? Is the person that is using it trained in the manner that is required by the manufacturer? Are they staying in the location at which the ordinance says they are supposed to be? measuring the sound? Did they back out background noise when they took into account, did they take an average of it, or did they take the right 3 minutes? Did they only take 2 minutes and 30 seconds? There are always people and always lawyers that will challenge almost anything. You know, the noise decibel meter readings are most applicable where there is a continuous type of sound, such as a commercial district where you have a nightclub that is routinely night to night, keeping people up, and it's a constant measure of sound versus people that are on a deck who are singing to one song and talking through another song, and then singing along to John Denver, and then, you know, having a deep conversation. It's intermittent sound. That's more difficult to measure with the noise meter. The good thing about this proposed ordinance is that you're not limited by the readings. So you've got both. You've got the ability of both.
I understand that you're not limited. That's part of my question is, if the police can go there and have a complaint, they go there and they hear the noise themselves, they can write the person a ticket, why do I even need to have the dB reading even in here? If it's something that can be challenged and end up getting us spending money trying to defend something that
You can take it out.
isn't defendable.
You can take it out. It doesn't need to be in there. You could start with the unreasonable loud sound, but my understanding of the direction of the ordinance was supposed to include that. I think you're covered with the other language. I
As
think it's
as an
easier.
attorney, which way do you think would be the best to go as an attorney?
I don't think you're harmed by having both. I think that you're covered with the unreasonably loud noise. I think that if the police department is trained, and Chief, you can speak to this, if the police department is trained with the operation of the measuring device, if it's calibrated in accordance with the manufacturer's standards, if everybody's property line is clearly marked and we know where the measurements are supposed to take place, then it's absolutely enforceable in court. Is it necessary? No.
Okay, let me ask this, is the 60 dB, where did we come up with this number from? Is this something, another concern I have is that they're gonna look at this and they're gonna say, this was a number that was just picked and there's no basis for this number.
There are lower and higher decibel reading requirements throughout the state of North Carolina. I
Okay.
looked at an entire chart of all noise ordinances. This is not the most extreme in terms of the level of sound being low, and it's not the highest level of sound either.
Okay.
So the decibel meter, in my view, is another tool for the chief to use, just like his gun and his breathalyzer. And and is also consistent with the Brunswick County ordinance, and that's what one of our main goals was as well.
I have one more request. There's a lot of people that had, in the past, came to a meeting thinking that the county police department was gonna give us a little demonstration on what a 60 dB noise was. And I was wondering if Wally could do that for us tonight.
I don't think
in this
that's
room?
applicable,
In this
because
room, yeah.
it's impossible to do in this
We don't
room.
have to use the.
It's impossible to
60
do in
dB,
this
60
room.
dB. It
No,
don't matter
because
what you're doing.
it doesn't make any sense with our ordinance, because the 60 dBs is from a property line, it's outside, there's other noise, he's got to calibrate the other noise, it's not as simple as, I'm speaking as 60 dBs, that's, and,
You have to back out the background noise. You need to be measuring it from the proper location.
I understand that,
If you're
but how
measuring it
loud,
within the room, it's
but
going
I'm
to be
saying,
louder
what
than
I'm
outside.
interested in is, how loud is 60 dB?
Well, the government says it's dangerous to your hearing.
and the county is using that. So I don't see any purpose behind that unless he wants, it's another tool that everybody uses, it's consistent with the county, and as we just heard, it's in the middle of what everybody uses. So I think you'd be giving a false impression of what that tool does and the effect of it in this room or we'd have to all go out to a property line, we'd have to be, against a property line, we'd have to, it's not as simple as turning on that machine and talking and hearing 60 dBs. It's the same as any other tool. It's made to look simple, but it isn't.
Any further direction?
Nope, but I thank you for doing what you've done.
Yep, thank you.
I will make those revisions, if any, and then send out another draft for everybody's review.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you.
Mr. Hewitt, do you have a report for us? I'm assuming there's no motion on that.
Just to look at it again.
I'll hit you with what I want right off the bat first. The Central Reach project is underway in earnest, and the town attorney is currently working on doing a whole lot of legwork in getting the easements together. We're gonna need easements on the ocean front for those properties beginning at 240 Ocean Boulevard East all the way down to 781 Ocean Boulevard West. Y'all will start seeing those requests or communications from the attorney coming out in the next several weeks or so. But what I need from you in the interim is that those people that want to get theirs done first, I'm asking for volunteers. With over 400 easements to be acquired, it's going to make our administrative process a lot easier if we take down the low-hanging fruit with those people that are willing to step forward and get theirs done first, letting it be known so we can get to work on them. And so I'm asking for your assistance in that. If you would be so kind as to let Christy know, communicate with her, and she will act as the gateway to get you first in line. Again, we're going to be needing almost 415, I think is the number, easements on the ocean front in order to construct the Central Reach project. I'm asking for your assistance in that administrative endeavor. So if you would like to volunteer, contact Christy. She's the point of contact on the project here at Town Hall.
David, will it involve doing anything other than signing the easement? I mean, I've got 4 or 5 neighbors that I can contact, and they can contact Christie by email, and they'll agree to do whatever we need.
From the, would you like to speak to the technical aspect of it? Pretty much, it's just a signature from you, but they will need identification to prove who you are. The clerk, we've got to stamp it. There's an administrative process to go through, but you bring the warm bodies up here and we'll take care of the rest of it.
Suppose they can't come here, they're off, and they're not planning to come for another 3 or 4 months.
We will handle that through Christie and be communicating with them through a more formal mechanism.
If they're volunteers, if they want to communicate with Christie, then we being my firm, will bump them up on the list of generating the easements. The title searches are in the process of taking place, and then we'll send it to Christie, and they can just come by Town Hall if they're here, or if any of you are here, you can just come by if you want.
And if they're not here?
We will be mailing them to them, but if you want to let them know, then we can expedite those also.
I do.
If any of you cannot hear, if you'll raise your hand, we'll use the microphones. I see a couple people doing, we don't want you to miss anything.
Can you hear me?
It's on, but I think you just need to speak a little louder.
Okay.
It's not.
Actually,
that now?
Oh, I shouldn't be close.
Okay. In keeping with the Central Reach project, we have received formal approval from FEMA on our extension for FEMA project, work project 559. That's the damages from Irene that we've been holding off for a while now so that we can incorporate that project in with a larger project in order to take advantage of economies of scale. That extension coincides with the Central Reach project's permit with a truncation date of 1 April 17. Along the lines of beach nourishment, our piggyback project back in 2014, where we added another 100,000 yards onto the Corps of Engineers project, that sand's gone. The permit requirement is to monitor the compaction out there for turtle nest, and we have requested relief from that requirement. Hopefully they'll see the wisdom of not monitoring something isn't there, they being U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Update on the Bridgeview Park. If you didn't notice the sky crane out there last week setting the restroom facility, it is now there on site. It's not ready for operation yet. We've got to drop some power to it before we'll be ready to use it. But the multi-purpose court, there's been a lot of grading going on out there. It should be surfaced this week or the beginning part of next week. There'll be a 2-week cure time on that. Pretty much the park is shut down, y'all, for the next foreseeable future until we wrap up over the course of the next month, with the exception of the playground and the recycle center, which you will access from Rothschild Street. Once we get the surface on the court out there, then the lights and the fence will follow. In case you haven't seen the bridge beautification project that's going on the north side, don't feel bad, I haven't seen it either. It was supposed to start the 4th of April, and I guess the contractor had some equipment issues that we've learned about. DOT informs me that he's supposed to be underway by the end of the week or the beginning of next week. But the completion date on that contract is the 6th of June. And, you know, it always never ceases to amaze me that paving work always happens on 179 or through the middle of Charlotte during the 4th of July or Memorial Day weekend. I just hope that the project up there will be done before Memorial Day weekend. So the good thing about it, our obligation for the project is to supply the utilities to it. There's no hold up on our end. We're doing our part. Just for the board and the public's information, you are aware that the Sewer Advisory Committee has been working diligently over the last 3 months. One thing that we've come across, in addition to the normal maintenance this past week, resulting from our sewer collection tank cleaning, it looks like we've got more corrosion in those tanks than we have anticipated or seen heretofore. This isn't an engineered estimate, but the operators are thinking that it's probably got about 7 years of useful life remaining. So this effort on what we're doing is probably timely and fortuitous, since those collection tanks are the ones that are in the bottom of the lift station, and you can't get them out without cutting a hole in the top of it. So that's kind of a big deal. Our computer server migration is complete, and that's important because our operations are hosted in the cloud. That's what keeps us alive during storms. We don't have to worry about operating from another location. We operate remotely and in the cloud. We'll be doing a self-assessment to determine or to ensure that our payment card industry compliance is up to snuff. The Office of the State Controller is performing a functional review of local governments, and we believe we are, but we just want to make sure that we're in compliance with what the state desires. Weekly concert schedule has been finalized and is posted on the website. I know there are many people in here that will be glad that there will be only beach music this year. And that's by request, repeated and numerous requests for only beach music. Sandala Park has a new addition out there. The entrance canal, we've noticed some infiltration in the canal over time. We've installed a bulkhead there, completed with partial funding from the Brunswick County Soil and Water Community Assistance Grant. And can I have slide 2? To lighten the load here a little bit, down at Sailfish Park, we've had a memory mailbox donated and installed down there. Some of you may be aware of the memory mailboxes on the ends of the island. This is primarily to serve those that have transportation challenges and would be able to access a waterside memory mailbox. But this was donated by Cheryl Causey Cox and is down in the Sailfish Park. In closing, Days at the Docks is this weekend, and the town is sponsoring the hospitality tent at the Dock Shred Surf Contest. We are only serving water. Any questions?
No question? Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. The mayor's report's really brief tonight. Everybody's done a great job, so I don't have a report tonight because I know you're anxious to hear Peter and his report.
My comments?
Yes?
No, first of all, I'd like to extend my best wishes for Ashley Royal and his family. That's why he's not here. His daughter's giving birth today. So that's, hopefully everything works out for his family. I thank the attorney for efforts for the ordinance. Just a couple changes to be expected. We're figuring each other out, and looking forward to closing that out and updating to what the folks were saying, and responding to some of the comments. And I think that's a great idea, as well as appreciate the comments about the agenda item and the general comments. At the end, makes total sense. So, that's why hopefully people come and contribute and appreciate the input. And that's it.
Ms. Eisenhower?
Thank you for being here this evening. Just a few quick things. Thank you, Noel, for all your hard work on the noise ordinance. I like the way that it's shaping up, and I really wanted it to be a tool that we could use that would protect our officers, that it was something that was enforceable and had real teeth and meant something that our community would benefit from. So I think we're getting there. Our budget, we held a budget meeting not too long ago, and I think it was also very telling. David had a lot of information to share with us. He still has a lot more to come back to us with. I'm very excited to see and hear what he has. One of the suggestions that I had, that I'm gonna bring up again to everybody, is just, I'd really like to see some kind of overarching chart, some kind of visual, so that we can see kind of more than just 1 year in our budget plan, so that we can look forward maybe 10 or even 20 years as to some of these large projects we have going on. So maybe some kind of Gantt chart or something where we have, we know when the Central Reach project is gonna begin and when it ends. When, we've got sewer going on, we've got all kinds of different things happening and money coming from everywhere. So it would make it a lot easier if we could see, when these projects will really start. Because we throw around all these, $35 million for terminal growing. Well, when would that actually begin? And it wouldn't be 35 million to begin with. So what I wanted to see is just something long-term so that we could see what would be overlapping. When are we gonna stop paying for this building? That kind of thing. So that would kind of help us when we're looking at this budget in the future. That's it.
Yeah, I don't, I have similar desires because we are in a stage as an island where we need to spend quite a bit of money to protect the island. But the people need to know what that is and why we're doing it, how much it's gonna cost, how it's gonna spread over time. And what brings it out to me is David just gave his announcement there, and you don't get a sense of what's going on till you read his weekly report. And then you think, this is our general manager who's got a list a mile long of major projects going on all the time, and having to go out and find out, where can we get some money? Who can give us some money? Where can we get some help? What's going to happen now that the state's backing off on this, the feds are backing off on, a lot of things are going on. So we need to work hard as a board, I think, to make sure we do our end of the job, to make sure that you know what's going on and aren't surprised when we come along with a budget that might have more than you thought in it or less than you thought in it. But I would thank David for, he takes us on a tour every couple of weeks of the beach to show us what's coming up and bring us up to speed, but also the weekly reports he gives us about all the actions that are going on, and there are a lot. And I think your comment about the longer term, we just heard now that we've probably got one 7 years from now. That's not a small thing. That's going to be a big thing. So that's going to be built in. This is now the Central Reach. Central Reach probably happen again in what, 10, 12 years? I anticipate 10 or 12 years. So having a nice 10, 15-year picture of the major things that we already know about, and then recognize that Mother Nature may visit us and decide that she's got some surprises for us that get thrown in the picture as well. So there's a management job coming up for all of us, and David's got his work cut out for him already. But I thank the people who come to the meetings, that listen, and trust me, the comments that are made about being limited on speaking, I don't foresee anybody who has a substantive observation to be made being turned away. If you come to just to blast the meeting and sabotage the meeting, that's another issue. But if you've got a major point you want to make, I don't see this board, anybody on this board saying, we don't want to hear it. We do want to hear it. And I hear from telephones, I hear from emails, I hear from text messages, I meet people on the street all the time, and I welcome those, except the really long ones. But those are important too, and if that's how you want to express yourself, do it. And I think all of us wish to do that, and one of those we'll get some comments on in a minute. But I thank you for participating in it and hope that we can do the job that you hired us to do.
Mr. Kaiser.
The one thing I really wanted to comment on was that David recently went to the Shallow Draft Inlet Users Group in New Bern, and one of the things he wrote here, to me, rings home to a lot of what has just been talked about. He says here, legislative program changes will have to happen in order to preserve the coast. With the elimination of beach and inlet federal funding, local governments alone cannot shoulder the burden. The town must evolve its legislative agenda to include activities with county and state legislators to further develop and sponsor funding mechanisms to provide for beach nourishment and inlet management. And I would like to see us put that item on the agenda for our next meeting to talk about potential strategies for, with the county and the state. Alan and David know and interface with so many people, it's unbelievable. And we have a tremendous opportunity here to have them work on our behalf to possibly help secure some additional funding. And so I think that's something we should be talking about and pursue. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Public comments. Number 14, Mr. McIntyre. Talk about whatever you want to talk about, sir.
Okay,
And Mr. Holden, you're next.
I'm John McIntyre, 246 Brunswick Avenue West. And I want to talk about the April 8th budget meeting. There's audio of it. If you haven't heard it, you should listen to it. At the April 8th special meeting, the commissioners provided the town staff with what I think is very useful direction regarding budget process, contingency planning, tracking of spending against plan, et cetera. I applaud the commission for attempting to control cost, and I wish the same concern for expenditures have been evidenced when you approve substantial outlays for the yacht parking complex. Having developed and managed very large budgets, I'm well aware that nothing is sacred when it comes to budget scrutiny. However, I'd like to comment on a couple of things that were discussed at the April 8th meeting that bothered me. Our town has a very capable staff, none of whom are getting rich at their jobs. They work hard, they're more responsive than any other town staff I've ever interacted with. As the commissioners correctly pointed out, the trend in the private sector is towards restricting employee benefits to contain cost. In reality, the private sector is generally more competitively compensated than our town hall employees, and I encourage you to continue to explore remedies in other areas of the budget to avoid any reduction in staff benefits. Near the end of the meeting, Commissioner Fletcher made some comments that were disturbing. He inquired regarding Chief Lane's retirement, guessed his age at about 80, asked if we intended to let him work until he was 100, and stated the chief received an excessive salary and mentioned that additional officers might be hired were we not paying the chief. While I appreciate the legitimacy of the budget component of such questions, I find their delivery was inappropriate, insulting, and likely placed the town at legal risk. Should the chief decide tomorrow to not fulfill his job responsibilities, the cost of firing him after those comments would constitute a serious hit to the town finances. I sincerely hope that the references to Chief Lane are not in retaliation for his pointing out the difficulties that the noise ordinance might pose for his team during the months of discussion prior to adoption. The board majority has, in my opinion, reacted harshly to those who fail to enthusiastically support their agenda. For instance, for example, the mayor was publicly chastised and essentially neutered and blocked from inviting speakers without prior board approval. Commissioner Kaiser's input is routinely ignored, and even the outside audit appears to be subject to the influence of the commissioner as an audit committee member that I deem contradictory to the concept of independent auditing. Finally, the recent action limiting public comments to a total of 30 minutes does not reflect the commission open to entertaining opposing views, and I like what I've heard from you tonight with respect to addressing that issue. In summary, I strongly support your approach to make the budget process more formal and encourage you to challenge all expenses while continuing to provide a positive and competitive work environment for our police and our outstanding town employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McIntyre. Mr. Holden.
I'm Jay Holden. I live at 111 Dunescape Drive. The shot heard around the world was fired on this day in 1775 in Lexington, Massachusetts. So I'm going to try to be as fast as a Minuteman, but might be a 4-minute man. Ordinance 15-01, the new building height ordinance, needs some changes because it does not work on all areas of our island. I met with Tim Evans on November 13th, and he agreed that changes need to be made. And you all had your hands full in December and early January, so I waited until January 20th to email you about this. I sent you an email explaining why I thought this needs changing. I attached my proposed changes. I guess I was ignorant on how this process works. I thought maybe something would happen as a result of that, but I now have been informed I'm supposed to get up here and speak, so here I am. In Dunescape, there are big sand dunes with steep slopes. The ground goes up and down, up and down. And because we have the high ground, we have an X zone, an area where no flood insurance is required. However, because of the extreme variation in our topography, there are places, many places, where we need to put fill in an X zone and a house is gonna be built there. The way ordinance 15-01 is written is fill is not allowed in the X zone. This ordinance does not allow for situations where the design flood elevation is 9 feet or more underground, which, believe it or not, can happen on the east end. The ordinance does not account for a new flood zone that appears on the proposed new flood maps that hopefully are coming soon. The 0.2% annual chance flood hazard zone, which is like the X zone. Finally, this ordinance does not always say what it meant to say, and I'm glad we have an English major on our board now. The ordinance defines building height as the vertical distance measured from design flood elevation, DFE, to the highest point of the structure. That's not always true. There are exceptions to that. The ordinance should define building height as the vertical distance measured from the height measuring point to the highest point of the structure. Then right below that, the ordinance defines height measuring point as design flood elevation or base flood elevation plus 2 feet. And to that I would add with the following exceptions, colon. And you already have exception number 1 is fine like it is. But next, exception number 2 should say, if the DFE is below finished grade, the height measuring point shall be finished grade. So that would take care of the one problem I mentioned, when DFE actually turns out to be underground. Then we need an exception number 3, which would read, in FEMA flood areas X and 0.2% annual chance flood hazard, the height measuring point shall be finished grade. If that's there, then now we can put fill in an X zone, or in the new 0.2% zone. So you're taking care of that issue that we have on part of the island, and you're preparing this ordinance to deal with the new flood maps that are coming. When the ordinance gives the maximum building height for each zoning district, it says, no building shall exceed a maximum height of 31 feet measured from design flood elevation to the highest point of the structure, with the exception that a building in an X zone when measured from the finished grade should have a maximum height of 35 feet. As I just pointed out, the problem with this is you don't always measure from DFE. And also, there's more situations where you measure from finished grade than just in an X zone. So, therefore, the way the ordinance should read there is it should say, no building shall exceed a maximum height of 31 feet measured from the height measuring point to the highest point of the structure, except that when the height measuring point is finished grade, the maximum building height is 35 feet. And it should say that for all 4 districts, rural, R1 and R2 and C1. It doesn't say that for the last 2, but that would cover all future possibilities. So, I thank you for.
I have a question. So you said Director Evans is agreed on your changes?
Well, in November,
Okay.
the latest communication I have from him was that he feels there's no need for any changes to the ordinance. Finally got a response by email last week. So,
Okay, so I'd like, I think we need to talk to Director Evans and understand his understanding of, why he's changed, I'd like to hear his latest understanding of your request.
right.
And we could put that on the agenda next month and give him time to do that. And also give him time to communicate with you if there's any questions that he may have of you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions of Mr. Holden? Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Alan, I didn't sign up, but I'd like to be able to let me speak.
Sure.
Yeah, not a problem.
Yep.
Tony Marwes, I live at 118 Frigate Drive. I have two things to talk about. The first one being a longtime resident of this island, Bev and Ed Weller. Many of you know Bev served on this commission. Ed Weller passed away last Saturday. The second thing is, I want to speak strongly about signing up for this particular part of the agenda. I believe I know which way you're going. My suggestion would be, if you want to sign up for the agenda public comment session, fine, leave it that way. But add a sentence that says, there is no need to sign, or those who wish to speak at the general public comment session are not required to sign. I strongly urge you pass that.
And that's I think that's the change we requested to make, so, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Anything else from the commissioners, audience? Is there a motion we adjourn?
Motion we adjourn.
Motion and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for being here. We're adjourned.